Welcome, welcome to our Friday Career Connection. We're excited to have so many of you on Zoom. My name is Tad Brinkerhoff. I'm the Associate Vice President for Grad and Online. And our purpose in Friday Career Connections is to hear from successful professionals and how they manage their career, how they built their career, how they manage their career, especially in specific fields. And so today we're excited to have Dr. James Hedges, who's the Dean of Online and Continuing Education at Weber State. Dr. Hedges has been a great collaborator with us as we talk about challenges and opportunities within higher education. And he's been really, really collaborative, which we really appreciate. He's going to spend the day with us here on campus after this to talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that all institutions of higher ed are facing, but particularly in the state of Utah. So before we turn the time over to Dr. Hedges, uh, Kirsten's going to put in the link the link to our LinkedIn page. I've said LinkedIn 3 times, but if you will please join our Grad Online LinkedIn page, we'd love to connect with you and have you be part of our community. And one last thing, as we traditionally do, we'd love to have you put in the chat where you are physically located, city, state, and country if you're outside the U.S. So if you'll just take a minute and tell us where you're joining us from, we would love to see which part of the state or the country that you are in. So I'm in Cedar City, so I'm going to put that in there. You see what we've got. Oh, we've got someone from Nashville, Tennessee, Santa Fe, New Mexico, Southern Utah, Cedar, Cedar, Cedar. So we've got both Southern Utah and the South represented. Oh, the Northeast, Spokane, Washington. Fantastic. Centerville, not to be confused with Circleville. Nice. Holiday. Great. We've got a great representation. Malibu, California. That's fantastic. So we've got from the East Coast to the South to the Northeast. So really good representation. If you're a SUU student, will you put what program you're in? What if it's a master's program or an undergrad program? Tell us which program you're in. Oh, Jackson's Heart's in Texas, of course. We've got people in cybersecurity, master's communication, MIS, which is integrative studies, interdisciplinary, MBA, elementary ed, nursing, marketing. Excellent. So all different majors represented. Arts administration, MBA, Speedway, which is a general bachelor's, Mesquite, Nevada, MPA, fantastic. Cybersecurity, great. I think that'll give Dr. Hedges an idea of kind of the audiences he's talking to. So let's turn the time over to Dr. Hedges and listen from him about his career journey. And then we will, if you have questions at any time, you can put that in the chat. I'll also have a list of questions for Dr. Hedges, but Dr. Hedges, we're looking forward to hearing about your career journey up to this point.
Well, thank you, Tad, and thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It's wonderful to be down here in Cedar City. I was just telling Tad that my daughter came down here this last year for the Shakespeare Festival and fell in love with this campus, and so I can certainly see why. Spectacular place, construction going on, which always is a good sign of growth. And so I'm just excited to be here with you and see all of your different pathways and locations. My career path, right, is best summed up as circuitous. I had a very non-traditional path. I started my educational journey in California at a big UC school, and it was not for me. And so I then went to a number of different community colleges and worked a number of different jobs and just kind of trying to find myself. And I really didn't have any direction. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I had a good dosage of immaturity to boot. So I just kind of floated around and eventually I kind of got serious and I'm like, some of these jobs that I'm working, I'm not sure I want to do that for the rest of my life. And so I'm like, the best path forward is through, education. So I really decided to really go all in on it, and I did. I think I had accumulated something like 40 credits into my mid 20s. And then when I got serious, I started taking, like 24 credit hours and 21 credit hours. And then I realized that through some faculty mentors that I might this education thing might be for me. And so they encouraged me to go on to grad school. So I went into a master's program at Sacramento State University, and there I met my wife in 2000, in March of 2000. And that is when things really shifted because I met her. And again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was getting a master's degree just because I thought it would look good on a resume. But my wife's like, you seem like a really great guy, but my whole life goal is to go get a PhD. And so lo and behold, about a year after dating, she took off for the University of Utah, far away from my home in California. And I decided, well, I don't have anything going on. Maybe I'll apply too. And so, lo and behold, I got full funding for the graduate program there. And then we both went to the University of Utah, got our doctorates in communication, and specifically for me, it was organizational communication. And then I slid kind of right into a faculty role. We both got jobs locally. I got a job at a small private liberal arts institution in Salt Lake City, Westminster College. And my wife started her journey at Weber State University, where we're both at to this day. And things were great. I was on a faculty kind of trajectory. I, spent some time there, doing a little research, doing a lot of teaching. I really fell in love with teaching, and I enjoyed it so much and I knew that from some of my teaching assistantships that I had done in my master's program. And so things were really good, right? Until one day, right? Of course, it's somebody from business approached me and said, "Hey, you've got some skills here that we may want to leverage as a university. Would you be interested in consulting and starting a leadership program with us?" And you would do the communication components of it. And so I got involved in that, and I started consulting with different businesses in the greater Salt Lake area. And that opened it up a whole new world. This same person who recruited me, he then became the dean of the Division of New Learning at Westminster College, and he was in charge of innovation. And one of the things he came to me with is he said, "I would like to fund you and your colleagues to create the best program you could ever imagine. Doesn't matter what it costs. I want you to think outside the box about what this looks like." So I got a handful of my colleagues together and we created a Masters of Strategic Communication program. It was competency based, project based, completely asynchronous. And after a year and a half of developing it, we threw it all in the garbage because we had totally recreated a face-to-face experience, which is not what our intention was. And so we went back to the drawing board for another year. And I then started teaching in it, right? And it was fabulous. It opened my eyes to online learning and how much work it was to do it well and how to create dynamic learning environments without context, right? And so that was a huge experience for me and my colleagues. But unfortunately, that person who recruited me, who oversaw kind of all these innovative programming programs, he decided to leave, took a job at in the University of Maryland, and when he did so, it left a huge administrative void. And what that meant was we had no real administrative support, and these programs were kind of left without any kind of champion. And I was, not going to just have spent 3 years of my life developing and then teaching and seeing the results and working with these master students just all go away. And so I started taking on more and more administrative responsibilities, to just basically to keep the survival of that program. And that led me to into administration. And I kept doing more and more and more because there were a number of these programs across the university, including that consulting arm of the university that I ultimately took over. And I had to talk with my president. And I'm like, listen, something's got to give. I'm doing two different jobs. And he's like, well, which one do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I think for the good of the institution, I think we need these kinds of programs. And so I decided to go all in on the administrative side of things, around 2014, 2015. And then started building that up and up and up. And then, I was very, very happy, but I miss teaching. I'll admit that. But as we've heard, if you follow the news, small private liberal arts colleges struggle because their only revenue streams are from enrollment. And so, with the demographic cliff and different enrollment challenges that institutions face across the country and high competition, the institution started to struggle quite a bit, and from an enrollment standpoint, and then the leaders, in my mind, were not making the best decisions for the future of the institution, and so that's where I decided, there's an opportunity that came open at Weber State University, and it was funny because my wife's the one who found it, and she's like, there's this job up here, and you're not particularly happy in your job right now. And it seems to be everything that you do. You seem like an ideal candidate. And I looked at it, I'm like, wow, this is kind of something. Like I do a lot of these things. And so, I put my hat in the ring there, and in 2022, I made the switch and moved my career path, jumped up to Ogden, at Weber State University that I've been at for the last 4 years, and could not love it more. And it is all administration. It is not the teaching role that I first signed up for as a faculty member. But that being said, I can see the impacts that we're having as far as navigating such an uncertain world as far as technology and the economy. There's a lot of volatility, and I think higher education is going to experience a lot of that volatility and needs to actually embrace change in a way that it hasn't before. And so a lot of the things that my division is responsible for Weber State is we're kind of the innovative and entrepreneurial arm of the institution. So we are on the front end of that. And I think that's an exciting place for me to be, because I see how needed change is, and we're the change agents. That does not mean that that is easy or that it is always fun, but it is challenging and it is invigorating because there's no right or wrong answers. It's a very ambiguous space, but it's one that I could not enjoy more. I get to create things and build things, and that's what attracted me originally to building that Masters of Strategic Communication program many years ago. So, and the rest is history, right? I'm been the dean there for the last 4 years, and boy, I sure enjoy it, and I interact with everybody across the university, and I have the luxury of having wonderful relationships with people and being surrounded by talented people, and I just consider myself blessed. So, for whatever that's worth, Tad, that has been my kind of career path. Not a traditional one per se, but boy, I wouldn't change anything in retrospect.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's interesting how most of us think when we're starting out that the career line is linear and it just goes up and up, but you've proven, like most of our guests, that it can be evolving and take different paths. James, what would you tell someone who's not sure what they want to do, how they figure that out? I mean, you've experienced that. What advice do you have someone who's like, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to do X or Y. how do they move in the direction and make progress in figuring out where their talents lie and what they like to do?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's no educator like experience. And so I would strongly encourage anyone to try different things, right? Don't just like get on one path and say, well, I'm in finance, so I have to go work for a finance company. I think the world we live in today is one that you need to have kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of experiences. You need to be able to do a lot of different things in order to navigate the world ahead. And so I would say, first and foremost, find your passion. Find what makes you happy. What is the culture that makes you happy? And that culture may be an industry, but it may be a company. You don't, it's hard to say. But it's undeniable when you wake up in the morning and you're excited to go to work, how much that means. I can tell you from firsthand experience, there was a point in my life where I was not happy getting up and going to work. I just felt like I was going through the motions, and that was not when I was going to do my best work and find my way. I had to get out of that. And so, I would strongly encourage you to try a number of different things, to work with different people, different across industries if possible. I realize, we all have to work these days, and as we are trying to figure out what education means and lifelong learning means, but like Tad mentioned, I think it's an evolution, and I think you have to be open-minded in that regard, to not just be set on that it has to look a certain way. I think it's going to evolve, and I think it needs to. I don't think there's going to be a lot of predictability in the job market in the many years to come.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I remember in grad school, I had a speaker talk about exploring, but one thing that stuck out, he said, give yourself till you're 35. Explore, but you can't explore till you're 60. So he said explore till you're 35. So I had that in my head, and sure enough, right at about 35, I landed where I felt like I belonged. So that's great advice. What would you say? So there's a lot in the news about AI proofing careers. So I've seen an uptick in the trades. A lot of people are concerned about AI taking our job, or jobs taking jobs in the future. So a lot of folks, the younger folks, are focusing on careers where AI can't take your job, maybe plumbing or cosmetology or whatever. What advice do you have for people that are just starting their careers? How do you AI proof a career, or is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, and such a great question, right? And one that gets asked frequently. I would shy away from the word AI proof because I think AI is going to become woven into the fabric of all of our work experiences. I think it is going to find its way everywhere. And as a result, we better get comfortable with it. Right now, I'd say higher education and industry are both having growing pains. I think there are certain companies, there's like a handful of them that are racing ahead of the pack, right? And creating data centers and advanced robotics to get out ahead of what this looks like. But a majority of companies, the ones that I talk to anyway, they're still trying to figure out what role it's going to play in their industry and in their workplace. And I don't think anyone has it quote unquote figured out. And so I wouldn't be scared by it. I really wouldn't. I think AI is a tool that we can leverage and that we should look at to complement the things we already do as human beings. I think if we approach it right and we make sure that any kind of project or any kind of initiative starts and ends with the human, I think AI can be an incredibly valuable tool that can help us to be far more effective and efficient in the work that we do. That being said, I think there are going to be certain skill sets that are going to be um, more needed in order to leverage that AI in whatever way in whatever shape it takes. And so here I would encourage people, and I think this is going to be more and more common in schools, is take advantage of smaller credentialing programs, whether they're micro credentials, whether they're certificate programs, things that bundle together a set of skills and competencies that are durable, things that complement the technical skills that a lot of times you hear about getting replaced by AI. I think the technical skills are always going to compete with AI, and I'm not sure how that plays out. I don't. But I do know that with the right durable skills, you will have the right skill set to be successful regardless of industry. And you'll be able to use whatever technical skills AI is enabling and to the best of that industry's ability. And I think that's the best we can do right now. I think as higher education institutions, we're trying to figure that out is what is that combination? We don't want to teach something that's going to be obsolete in a year. So what do we do? Well, we need to figure that balance out between the technical and the durable skills. But one thing's for certain, right? It's not going to replace human beings. Okay. Human beings are going to have a fundamental role in making decisions, and AI can help with that. But I think right now, don't be scared of it. Everybody's learning. Everybody's feeling a little insecure about it. There are some that are really excited by what they're seeing and doing. But at the end of the day, we're all in a very nascent stage. We're just trying to figure this thing out together. So I would encourage you to do just that, is to partner up, whether it's with people or with different organizational units or with different partners, industry partners, and learn together. I think that's how we're going to best be able to use this technology.
Yeah, that's great advice. The other thing I've noticed with some of the students that I've worked with in the past, the ability to connect with others, I think is not as great as it used to be just because we spend so much time on our phones. So if you can force yourself to get off your phone, mix with people and really practice those people skills, I think that's something that AI is not going to replace either. So, all right, we have a question from Allie. This is a good one. Ali says, I feel like I have the Swiss Army knife experience, but have a hard time integrating my scattered experience on LinkedIn and resumes. How are employers looking for this, and what positions reflect this need for varied experience?
Yeah, that is, there's always the experience itself and then the perception of that experience and the representation of that experience. And it's sometimes that's hard to do. I think the the things that you want to accentuate, Allie, are the things that employers are all looking for. They're looking for those durable skills of adaptability, of flexibility, of being comfortable in ambiguity. People who can thrive in different environments, even though they're volatile, right? No longer are they looking for people who just follow orders. They need people who, on a resume, you can demonstrate not that you were part of some project, but that what was your role in that project? How were you proactive? What were the things that you had to do that make you an ideal candidate, regardless, right? Like we all have to deal with conflict management, negotiation, different kinds of skill sets that are not going to go away. Ultimately, we're all in the problem-solving business, regardless of what we do. And so to do that well, you need to work as a team and be able to have foster really strong relationships. And at the core of every relationship is building trust. Those are the kinds of things that you want to bring to life and illustrate through concrete examples, things that are ultimately going to speak to an employer and say, okay, like it's one thing for them to just throw on there that they had this experience and this experience and this experience. What did they learn? Like that is what I ask my teams every day. I'm like, there is no difference between success and failure in our jobs. Zero. Okay. Because failure is where we learn the most. Okay. It's only a failure if you don't learn from it. So employers are looking that you have that capability to try new things and not get discouraged, but to use it as a motivator. And then ultimately, you took something that was perceived as a failure and you looked at it and said, I learned this, and then I actually applied it later. If you can actually illustrate that in words, it is going to set you up for great success because employers are all looking for those skill sets right now.
Yeah. And that's hard to do, right? To be honest
Yeah.
about failing. But
Yeah.
I agree. It shows you're vulnerable and you're willing to learn.
Yes.
I would also add like transferable skills, really focusing on, okay, so for example, I was a Spanish chemistry major, which and then I went into business. And so I was always explaining what I learned from those two areas. And relating anything you can into a story that really communicates transferable skills. So good question. Thanks, Ali, for asking. Um, this is a topic we haven't explored much, but I'm interested with your wife's career and your career. How have you managed dual careers with a spouse or partner? Um, that seems to come up from time to time. My wife is a nurse, and so uh, unfortunately, her career has kind of taken a backseat to mine, and I feel bad about that sometimes. And she reminds me from time to time that that's been the case. But how have you been able to manage dual careers with your wife in terms of location and jobs and family obligations? Give us some advice on doing that successfully.
Yeah. I mean, that boy, it's funny you bring that up because that is in the background of any successes either one of us have had, right? Is navigating those relationship waters, figuring out how do we each build our own career paths, without one of us feeling like they're taking a back seat all the time. Obviously, it's always a trade-off, right? And then once we both decided to start our careers first and get established before we started a family. Once we had kids, then suddenly everything kind of shifted and we both realized, okay, we're on the same team here. We just pick up the slack wherever that slack is. And that's not easy. Like that is, I mean, there is a lot of times where there's stress, there's problem solving, there is humor, there is losing your mind and pulling your hair out. I mean, you name it, right? Um it's the stuff that I'm going to look back and remember on my life and say, gosh, at the time I'm just like going crazy, but ultimately that's when things were the most exciting, right? When we're trying to figure out how do we actually do this? My wife was commuting for 15 years before I decided to do a commute. It's about a 45-minute commute. But when you're talking about an hour and a half every single day, that is unaccounted for when you're really busy and doing things and trying to give our children experiences, it can be tough. It can be tough. Like you are gonna have to have perspective and you're gonna have to be sometimes you're just gonna have to, say, yes, I am gonna do that. And I don't know how I'm gonna do that, but we're gonna do that. And that's really interesting because there have been times where my wife has felt like she had to take a back seat and times I felt like I had to take a back seat. We have been lucky because my wife is a faculty member, so her summers are relatively open, right? And so does have that ability to kind of take care of some things that I don't have the luxury of doing because I'm very 8 to 5, 5 days a week. But that being said, I think the most important thing, Tad, is that we can both poke fun at each other and we can poke fun at ourselves. Because if we lose that sense of humor, we are done, right? If we start taking ourselves too seriously, it is over. It's just too easy in today's day and age to be overstressed and crash and burn over, money and finances or time management or priorities. It's just you got to keep your expectations in check and just keep a good sense of humor. You know, and my kids, I love to remind my kids when they're like, Dad, why don't you choose our side? It's like, well, see, I didn't have a choice with you, okay? But I chose your wife, my wife. So your mother, I picked her, okay? I didn't pick you, right? You just kind of showed up. So if I don't maintain a sense of humor, I'm toast.
I'm going to use that on my kids. I love that. It's great. All right. Before I ask you this new question, I want to do a poll. So this question is related to the value of higher education. I know that's been called into question. When I was looking to go to college, no, at least in my mind, no one questioned the value of higher education. I think it was widely recognized. How many of you on this call, if you put it in the chat, how many of you think that the value of higher education is the same that it was 20 years ago? If you say yes, the value is still the same, please put yes. If you're like, no, the value has diminished, please put yes or no. Okay, we've got no, no, no. Okay, interesting. No, it has diminished. No, this is interesting. Everyone's no. Okay. Um, I'm going to ask one more question of you on the call. Why? What has diminished? Is it the earning power? Is it the experience? Is it the cost? What would you say has diminished the value? Oh, all of the above. Okay, thank you, Brian. Any other thoughts? Natasha agrees. All of those things. Earning potential has been capped. That's interesting. Low ROI when looking at tuition costs. More competition, more people are educated than before. That's true. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Oh, someone said unsure. I felt like it was more diminished in 2008 after undergrad. Masters opens doors. The job market, fellow BS holders going to work in the food industry. Yeah, that's a common story today. Value has changed. The problem with the value is perception. It's not perceived as the same. And experience is more valuable to a lot of people now. Yeah, you see like the Googles of the world not requiring degrees. They just want to see what you can do. Someone said the MBA is all about the network. There's a lot of truth to that. Feels less valuable today because degrees become more common and expensive while wages do not keep up with inflation. Skilled trades often now offer faster, cheaper paths to stable, higher paying jobs. You need a master's to stand out. I can definitely see that. So, so Dr. Hedges, tell us what's your perception? Now, this is a loaded question because you and I both work in the higher education field. It is our job to create value and communicate that value. What would you say to someone who said college is just or university education is just not worth it from an ROI or from some other perspective? How
Yeah.
would you answer that question?
For the first thing I would say is I understand your perspective. I can see how people could have that perspective of higher education. A little story is back when I was overseeing this consulting arm, this leadership program for our university. I remember distinctly talking to a senior leader at Discover Card, and I had done trainings for them, and we had a great relationship, and going back years. And I remember sitting in his office one day, and he kind of looked at me and he's like, listen, because I was always like, hey, let me know what you need. Like I'm here. Like I think higher education needs to be responsive, right, to professional education and executive education. And he's like, James, he's like, I'll be honest. He's like, I don't care if my employees have a degree. I just need them to have the skills. Okay. That's all I want to see. That's all I'm really looking for. He's like, the degree's nice and I get it, but ultimately, like, it's the skills that I need. Now, we both agreed because that launched us into quite a conversation, right? We went down a rabbit hole on that one. And It's not that the value of the degree has really diminished. It's just I don't think higher education has evolved as far as the packaging of the learning that we provide. I think we need to address affordability. We, like you has been mentioned, it's cost prohibitive in many regards. It's not always easy or convenient. No, a majority of college people have to work, and many of them work full time. And so as a result, we're going to have flexible time periods for classes, have online educational experiences that don't sacrifice the face-to-face magic, right? And educational technologies are enabling that, but it's slow. I think, higher education, it has been at an inflection point for some time. And we're trying to find ourselves. Who are we to prepare the modern student where they feel like they have a good ROI? That a degree really means something both to the students and to the employers. Employers for many decades have said there's a skills gap, that the students are coming out with degrees, but they're not adequately prepared for the jobs that they're doing. And I don't think we've taken that as seriously as we should have. Because now employers have options. They can go to LinkedIn Learning, they can go to these different educational platforms and get pretty good content, right? I think it's really complementary to what higher ed does. I don't think it replaces it, but I can see where the competition's getting stiffer and people are calling it into question. So again, I think it makes sense that if people have that perspective, okay? Um, but I do see higher education changing. I do see us moving. It is a slower pace than I would like to see personally, because I'm a very impatient person. However, I do see some of the groundwork being laid, the infrastructure changing, where we are accommodating on ramps and off ramps, realizing that college can't just be a place that people went. It needs to be a place that people return to. And I think we need to change our identity in that regard and be the upskilling and reskilling kind of entity that people think of first so that we are legitimate and can help them at every step of their career. Because as I mentioned, I think the economy is going to be so volatile, people are going to be desperate to get upskilling and reskilling in an AI economy and stay relevant in that economy. There is 170 million incumbent workers in the United States, and I think all of them are going to need some upskilling at some point in time. And so the question is higher ed going to be ready for that? Or are we just going to turn it over to some of these others who are just teaching hard technical skills? It's a good question. Again, it comes back to that durable skills and transferable skills weighed against the technical skills and knowledge. And I think that's something that we are finally really taking seriously in higher education and figuring out that the ROI has to be there. We can't saddle students with debt, and it's flat out irresponsible to saddle them with debt and not get them graduated. There's 40 million people in the United States that have some college and no credential, and they are just that's not fair. Where something's wrong with that. So again, I think that's one of the data points we're looking at to see how can we change and adapt to what our students need. Because at the end of the day, our students need to be at the center of the decisions we make, right? And this is a central problem we have to solve, but we need to solve it together. So this little poll you're doing is absolutely the kind of thing we need more of. We need to hear from everybody and what their experiences are so we can understand it and then shape something that works for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think our challenge in higher ed is that we have to create value and communicate that value, but we belong along with government agencies and other organizations, what some would term dinosaur organizations. So we are slow to change. We've been around 100 plus years, both most institutions in the state of Utah have been around that long, and we're not built to nimbly change you just look at the tenure system. I mean,
Yep.
what other organization offers guaranteed employment for life once you hit, the tenure, when you hit tenure status? And so, and Seth made a comment that higher ed needs to adjust faster to meet the change of pace. But I would venture we don't do a really good job of that. We need to do better. I think you at Weber State, you in particular, I've been impressed with the things you've done, but what would you say? How do you drive change in an organization like higher ed or a government or a state entity where change is not necessarily welcomed or there's not huge incentives to change? I know in business, like if you don't change, you go out of business, but we do get state funding, and that makes it less of an incentive to change, maybe when you've got some funding backing up. What's your suggestion for someone who works in an organization that's slow to change? How do we impact change without getting discouraged?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'll be honest, if you're in like the education sector, right? Like we are, um, we get our money from partially from the state legislature. We are fortunate because the state legislature has told us that we need to change. And they, in some regards, put their money where their mouth is, where they're like, hey, we will make available monies for you to make these significant changes, but you actually have to do them. Now, there's n numerous obstacles, right? There's history and tradition. There's shared governance that can sometimes get in the way of us moving and especially moving fast. I would say senior leaders need to all work together. The larger the bureaucracy, the more likely it is that one person could be a gatekeeper and shut down innovative processes or initiatives. And so you really need it to come from the top. You need a senior, like a president, CEO, what have you, to say, this is who we are going to be. We have to have this. And then they need to be serious and invest in it and say, I will pay, right, to make these changes because ultimately they come at a cost, right? Whether it's time or money. The investment needs to be made so that people know that they're serious about it. And then you need champions, people who have passion for that change. And those people need to lead the charge so that they can kind of get people, involved and so they see themselves in the future and they get excited by that and their contributions. That takes training, that takes leadership, that takes a lot of different things that may or may not be present in different organizational structures. And so there's as I've just laid out, that's just a small sample size of obstacles that we face, right? In affecting meaningful change that is not glacial in pace. And so I think we're at a point in time where we are going to be forced to change with or without our permission because the economy is going to change pretty abruptly with how AI is going to influence it and impact it. And so we have a choice, right? At least in the education sector, either we can have that change happen to us or we can try and get out in front of it. And so right now at Weber State, well, I'm lucky because the leadership there has seen the need for this and has gotten everybody on the same page and said, hey, we're going to do this. And it aligns with what the state legislature is funding and what they want and the job market. Utah is a very pro job market state. Okay. And so no matter where you're at, you need to align to that because that is, economic development is where it's at. We do workforce development, but those lines are blurring. And so we need to merge those things more and more. And that's not higher ed's history. But it's going to need to be. We're going to have to re-author our story a little bit. And like I said, I see it happening, but boy, Tad, it's not going to happen overnight, right? It is going to take a little bit of time. Um, but I do think that the next few years to come are going to be wild. I think we're all going to have to buckle up.
Yeah, I agree. And I think AI is just going to accelerate that change. All right, we've just got a couple minutes left. Um, And this is, you made a comment earlier about you had a mentor that left a role and maybe left a void in some of the goals that you had. Um, if you could just, as our last, as we wrap up, tell us how you have used relationships with mentors or people that have reported to you, uh, both at a close level, but then also I know you've dealt with presidents of universities. What's been your approach to creating the kind of relationships that you need to get things done, to implement change? What have you done to create the kind of network of relationships that have helped you become effective?
Boy, that's a great question. I mean, I've had such a luxury of studying in a discipline, organizational communication, that makes you take a hard look at the intersections of culture, leadership, and structure, and how they all mutually implicate each other. And so I've seen good leadership and I've seen bad leadership. I understand that the fundamental building block of any culture, of any leadership or any structure is trust and relationships. And so you got to start there. You need to build a strong culture, right? Because culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Okay. And you got to get that right. Once you have the culture, then you can affect some structural change that can actually take root and have some staying power. I have always been of the opinion, based upon the people who have mentored me, is it's so important that you to help people grow. You need to help them overcome their insecurities, their fear of failure, not taking risks or chances. You need to make that something that is not only okay, but it's to be expected. I think that is something I try and nurture in those around me. And those who I've always respected the most have been the ones that are like, no, just be yourself and don't be worried about the end result and the outcome. Like it'll be whatever it is. You try your hardest, okay? You work really, really hard and you try to have good, solid relationships and do right by those, and you're going to be fine. Like nobody's going to fault you for working as hard as you can and being a nice human being, okay? And at the end of the day, you may fail. And I'll tell you this, if you're not failing, you're not trying very hard. Okay. Because that's just what it comes down to. So I try to create that atmosphere, Tad, as much as possible, because that's the one that has helped me grow and push myself. Because I'll be honest, like I know for me, I can only speak from my own experience. At the end of the day, I was a scared little child until some people took me under their wing and said, it's okay to make a decision and stand by it and then fall down. Just brush yourself off and get up. Okay. And then move on. Okay. It's not that big a deal. Anybody who's trying hard will fail. Okay. And that just kind of freed me. And I'm like, oh, I'm scared of just fear. I'm scared of just, this nebulous thing that really doesn't matter. It's holding me back. So I try to find those things in people that are holding them back and try and help them through that. It's as simple as that. And be nice. Like just it's easy to be mean and easy to, forget about that people have feelings. People are mostly emotional and less rational. And in organizational life, we assume they're all rational, and that's just not reality. So we need to take that into perspective and treat people how we want to be treated.
Yeah. And I will say, during the short time I've known you, you are a nice person and it's someone that I trust because you give of your time freely, and we're very grateful for that. Not only from an institutional level, but just a personal level. And thank you for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. I love people that pay it forward, and you're certainly doing that. So thank you for being here with us. Thank you everyone to join us today. And also, thanks for your comments that you put in the chat. Those are really, really helpful. Couple of announcements. Our guest next week is Sean Vanderhoven, who is an entrepreneur and best-selling author on leadership. So we'll hear from him next week at Friday at noon, as we normally meet. Just a quick reminder, please join us on our LinkedIn. Follow us on LinkedIn. We will be picking two lucky winners who have followed the group this week, and you could get a SUU sweatshirt in the mail. Also, we're still registering students for summer, second term. So if you're a current student and haven't registered, make sure you do. We do have some scholarship money if that would be helpful. We have a little bit of scholarship money left. Seth, who's on the call, or you can contact Seth or you can contact me. And I have one last question for you on the chat. I'm not going to let you go before we do another quick survey. We're contemplating a Salesforce certificate. How many of you would be interested or would find a Salesforce certificate at a low cost interesting to you that would help train on sales and also using a sales CRM like Salesforce? If that would be of interest to you, would you please put yes, I'm interested, or no, I'm not interested? Okay. Oh, someone just registered today. Me, yes. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, nope. We got one no. That's fine. Okay, sales training, yes. Okay, that's helpful. It's not very scientific, but it's helpful. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Get out and enjoy the sun or wherever you are. If you're in Nashville, Tennessee, get out there, enjoy the humidity, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye, everybody.